Hello and welcome to episode 503 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the creator of the webcomic Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And a man who, when we're on this Zoom call, I can see these little screens in his glasses. I'm not sure if I can see us or something that I probably shouldn't be seeing. Either way, I'm looking at Tony
I should
Esmond.
change that, shouldn't I? Yeah.
Hello, Tony.
Hello.
I was hoping he was going to load them up on screen just so we had that comedy effect.
I so almost did that. Yeah. I remember I did that once with a post on the website. I said, oh, you know, when you're sitting here writing in a cafe and you can just see my laptop at the bottom and me looking at a pair of boobs.
Yeah.
The only person who replied was Rachel Lee Carter.
Well, the infamous gag that I did a pair of breasts behind me as a virtual background. And every time I loaded up Zoom, it loaded up and I couldn't fucking stop doing it.
That was
funny. That was the best. Months, that gag.
That is the best, and that is the sort of high quality, cultured, and intelligent conversation you expect from the Awesome Comics Podcast. A show that's been going for almost 10 years, over 500 episodes, and is full of high quality content.
Boobs.
And cocks. Anyway, welcome to the show,
well,
everyone.
There's three of you here.
yeah. But thankfully, instead of our waffling, we get great guests on to talk about comics.
We have done this week, haven't we?
Yeah.
Again.
And this week, we're very pleased to be joined
Worth
by
the money, we are. Oh, yeah, with
Connery, Shane Connery Volk, who you've heard us mention a few times from Nottingham and Prairie Gods. So we had a chance to talk to him about all things comics, creation, narratives, art. It's a fantastic chat. We had a lot of fun. We probably would still be talking now just about like comics and everything in between. So that's to come up, as well as a whole bunch of recommendations. I've actually read quite a lot of comics recently, so I kind of like made like a tally. So I think I'm good for recommends for about the next month, I think.
I've read some good ones and not so good ones.
Yeah. Do you actually finish the not so good ones? You know...
There was a series I was working with, it was 5 or 6, and I got to 3.5, and I was like, there's better things to be doing in the world than reading this. It's terrible. So I stopped.
Wow.
There's a lot, you can tell, because my favourite one is the Marvel app, because you can tell what you've read and what you haven't. It has a little blue tick on it almost. And some of them I'm like, oh, fucking life's too short, mate.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like munching on a shit sandwich and thinking, oh, perhaps there's a bit of sweet corn at the end. You know what I mean? It's like, no, just put it down. It's awful.
I mean, you are the William Wordsworth of this podcast. I will say that. You know, like 100
like
years...
fucking Jeeves and Worcester sitting here.
In 100 years, or like 1,000 years in this Star Trek-like future where everyone's like teaching children on these holographic pads, etc. You know, it's stuff like that will live on.
I always think it's that thing where Superman's taught about poetry, isn't he? And he's got, I do not think I shall see a thing so lovely as a tree. And then Dan comes on and goes, sweet corn.
Yeah,
it's like that.
Eating a shit sandwich.
Might be a bit of sweet corn on the end, so keep going.
Oh, dear God. But it also teaches us a lesson. Look forward to things, even if it seems dire. There might.
Sometimes it'll be all right in the end.
There's always hope.
And as the quote goes, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Wow. Whenever you, we're at the point of like show, friendship, everything else, Dan, that when you say, as the quote goes, I get a little bit nervous.
Who knows what's going to spring forth?
Which of you three is the worst for sending through really lively fucking messages on the WhatsApp? Dan. Yeah.
Guilty.
What's that phrase about? It's like this dude's got like a puppet on his head. What's that one you always like about? You're one of your favourite phrases. He's got like a fucking weird puppet on his head or something. What's that one?
Not the one with a duck.
Yeah.
Is it a duck?
What does it say?
Oh God, it's fucking escaping me now. It's like, I can't remember.
I'll tell you what. We'll have a think about this.
It's something about God's light, isn't it?
I don't know.
Every day we stray from the light of God.
Every day we stray further from God.
From the light of God.
Yeah.
Who is sending me that? And to follow that is some absolute fucking filth that comes through on my phone from you.
Yeah.
Just an example of how far we strayed.
Yeah, indeed. And we're starting to stray further away from the
Yes,
point
sorry,
of the
the
show.
comics.
So let's
comics.
get back on track, because you lovely people are here for some comic chat, and we've got some comics to recommend at the end. But before that, here's our fantastic discussion with the one and only Shane Connery Volk. Okay, this week we're very excited to be joined by a creator who's not only taken the stage by storm with his band One Bad Son, but is now taking comics by storm as well. First with his work on Nottingham, and now pod favourite Prairie Gods. Welcome to the show, Shane Connery Volk.
Thanks, good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on, man.
Shane.
Yeah.
Yeah, your name's been mentioned a few times in the last month.
Quite a few times. Like as always with this show, like someone appears on our radar when we just discover a comic, and then all of a sudden you just see more artwork and stuff everywhere. And Prairie Gods. I think Prairie Gods is where we started, wasn't it? And then went back.
And we went back and looked at Nottingham and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
I think it's kind of cool. And as we sit here, 4 is out and 5 is next. Yeah. So if you're listening to this in a few weeks, we don't know about 5 yet. So
right.
No, we don't.
Although we're very curious.
Saying that, you know what is happening in Prairie Gods. Yeah, every issue's like a different sort of head trip.
Yeah. The 5th one goes in a different direction again. So.
Okay.
Because
Because we've got me and Vince are obsessed with the threads that are running through it, and the characters who appear. Because you do that, it's for anyone who wants to read it. You can just read a single issue, but you'll be more enriched by going into it and seeing, because characters appear from other stories. Yeah. And I'm a little obsessed with that. Yeah. That there's some kind of thing going on.
I love that stuff too. That's like some of my favorite, fan fiction and that kind of thing is like, what's really going on might be nothing. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of
go on, Dan.
Frank Miller, in Sin City, where like the characters would cross and you'd see one sit in a bar and they might say a line from their story. Not quite the same, but reminiscent of.
Honestly, and that is where a lot of that came from, because I love that about Sin City, where you're like, so a main character is literally, like you said, just sitting in a bar in the next issue. And I love that shit, because it's in the same world. So there's a chance those characters don't know each other. Maybe they do, but they're not consequential to each other's story, or maybe they become that later on. And for a writer, it's cool, because then you kind of plant these little seeds and you think, well, maybe I come up with something that like brings those people together,
I'm going to tick off. Yeah, I'm going to tick off Miller on my list of artist influence. But I actually would argue with you, Shane, and see what you think of this, that it's more than that, because having a character in a bar is fine, but having a character form part of a narrative in a following issue. So in the First World War issue, which is issue 3, I think, the character who appears in that, who's kind of very much a secondary character, the female character, then appears in 4 as the main role. So it's not just a cameo; it's a full-on co-star, if you want to put it in sort of movie deal kind of things. Co-star appearance.
And she's not named in Race the Devil, but that's Freddie Davis's like quote unquote niece that he talks to in his garage.
Oh God!
Right.
See now, right?
Yeah,
okay. We got to go back to the beginning. This is right. Okay.
See, this is why the trade's going to be cool, because I did notice as people were reviewing the books, like you guys read so many comics, like there's just and so many stories going on. So I know month to month, that's the cool thing with the one-off stories, is you don't have to have read the last one. But when the trade comes out, if you read them consecutively, I think you'll get more stuff out of it, because the stories will be fresh as you go.
Yeah.
And there's also something to be said for the reread as well, isn't there? Like the thing that you didn't spot. But by the end of the book, I need to go back to the beginning again, because I think we mentioned that on the. I love
which creates a conversation as well. So it creates a comment. I've had a comic shop conversation about issue 3, for example, where I've talked about it, and you need that's it. I think we're sort of stepping over our own toes here. Really, give us a. Could you just tell what it's
Prairie
about?
Gods?
So do you want like the elevator pitch for it?
Well, we're not. If you want to give an elevator pitch, just tell us what it's about, man. Yeah, do you know what I mean? We're not.
I had come up with this. The shortest version of the story is that I can tell you is that I was working on Nottingham, and for a little while I had a Patreon going, and I was sharing Nottingham art and behind the scenes stuff. And then between volume 2 and 3, I had a bunch of months off where I didn't have scripts, and I was kind of like just looking for things to give my patrons. And I always wanted to write my own story. And like, I love, like you mentioned, Frank Miller, Sean Gordon Murphy, like all of my favorite artists have also, Todd McFarlane, have gone off to write their own stuff. And I wanted to do that. So I thought, well, here's a cool way to do it. I'll write a story and serialize it on my Patreon. So the first book I wrote was actually Heaven's Trail. And what I had first done was I wrote this whole epic story about these people that go to this town, and this weird stuff starts to happen, and there's this kind of ghostly sheriff. And as I wrote this thing over the course of weeks, if not months, this sheriff character was my favorite thing about this book. And when it was all done, I had all this stuff written, and I thought to myself, man, I can't wait to get through these shitty books so that I can write the sheriff story, because that's the one I want to do. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, you have to just get rid of all this stuff. That's the cool part. It took you all that writing to get to something that was cool. And then the idea hit me to, start drawing different stuff. I mean, Nottingham, it was a lot of horses and medieval stuff. And so you
started off with a historical
with an easy
epic,
job
which,
yeah.
I mean, hey, I like to dive in the deep end. That if you want to learn how to do something like,
doesn't get deeper than drawing horses, man. Right?
But like anything, the more you do it, the better you get. But anyways, so I had this idea. The first story I wrote was Heaven's Trail, and it was just this little ghost story. And I was like, that's cool. And then it hit me. I'm like, that's the shit I love. I love serialized stuff. I love, I grew up watching like the original Star Trek series, where it's like every show is different. There's kind of a horror show. There's one that's like super sci-fi or whatever.
It used to be comics. That's used to be what comics was.
Yeah.
Really.
And I loved, it made me feel like when I was a little kid, you go to the spinner rack at like the local drugstore, and you just pick up a book because you think the art's cool or whatever. It goes through an 8-year-old kid's mind, and then you read it and you're like, that was great, and it's a whole conversation around that. But I liked that idea of doing something serialized also because I come from music and film. I'm like, I have a lot of friends that aren't into comic books. So I'm like, this is a cool way to get people in, because it's like you just pick up an issue. You don't have to have read them all. So that was kind of the idea. So I decided to take this story and center it around a fictionalized version of my hometown of Broadacres, where just like crazy shit happens. And then as I was coming up with ideas, I thought, well, does it have to all be ghosts? Maybe there's some sci-fi. Maybe there's some, I don't know, it could be time travel stuff. It could be whatever I feel like. And I also thought, let's see what people think of that. So, and obviously there's other people like me out there that are like, it doesn't have to be genre specific, right?
Yeah. And you can challenge yourself by doing different things. I mean, the First World War is underdeveloped in the US, but over here it's a massive thing. We have Charlie's War is
Canada as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, doing that, but then drawing something in the mines and drawing a car race, and I'm guessing it's stretching you as an artist as well.
You know what? So the Race the Devil, literally in my mind, I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. Because my dad passed in 2019, and he loved the GTO that Freddie Davis, my dad's name was Fred. The GTO that Freddie Davis drives is the car my dad always wanted. So I wanted to do a little shout out to my dad. And
nice.
But then I'm also like, not only have I never really drawn cars are hard to draw, and races are typically super boring, and they're very hard to do in comics because it's unlike when two people are fighting, you get a lot of motion and you can twist bodies around and like do cool shit. A car race is like, it's tough. On film it's cool because you get the speed. And I was like, you know what you're going to do? You're going to draw a book that is half car race, and you have to make it interesting. That was my challenge to myself.
If you take a photograph of a car race, it's a still car.
It's a couple of cars, isn't it?
There's nothing. Yeah, it's like seriously, like it's a very, very difficult thing to tell that way. So I challenged myself to come up with a cool little story and a way to make the race itself somehow interesting and have some stakes, but also figure out how to give those cars life and all of that. So oftentimes, like when I write, I try to get down to like the most simple idea. I'm like, make half of a comic book a car race and see if you can make it cool. like make it interesting, make it exciting, right? And some people thought I got there.
The concept for that also makes it exciting for me. You got that concept. Did you want to explain what the first issue was about? Because that is genuinely hooked me for the series.
Oh, and as soon as Tony said what it was, I was like, I got to read this.
Yeah,
you're in on this.
Yeah,
awesome. That's really cool to hear. I wanted Heaven's Trail to be the first book, and then the first editor on the book, Chaz Pangburn, was like, "Man, you got to make the race issue the first one. Like, give them the like crazy sort of like, what the fuck is this story?" Initially, so Race the Devil is Freddie Davis is like a championship NASCAR driver. He has one last race. He's getting up there in years, but when he was young, at some point in his hometown of Broadacres, him and a buddy, like they used to race this old speedway. He saw something out there that just blew his mind. Fastest thing he'd ever seen. So he's gone through his whole life, becoming the best. He's going to be the best in the world because he knows the only way he can race this thing that he saw is if he is like the greatest racer in the world. And so the thing that he's racing is the devil. Initially, I was like, I thought, I like these stories. Like, I love supernatural stuff. I love ghost stories. And just, there were some places around my hometown. Actually, there was a spot out in the hills where an old road used to go around. And there was a fatal accident there somewhere, I think probably back in like the 50s or 60s. And it was like, there was a couple pieces of the car still there. And there's something about that just, I love, like, you're just like, man, that's spooky. That's weird. Like, no one really knows the story, but what happened out there. It's real. So initially I was going to have Freddie Davis race like a ghost racer, like somebody that died out on the track in like the 30s. And if you race fast enough, you can challenge this ghost to a race. But then I thought, do you know what's cooler than a ghost is the devil? What if if it's just the devil? And it's like, is it too much? Maybe, but it's catchy.
The age-old tale of like, the master craftsman versus the devil, isn't it? Whether it be, we've seen it with musicians and gamblers, all kinds of things, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a massive wilderness story metaphor anyway. He's the old man. We love these later life. We've talked about King of Spies. We've talked about Logan. There's all these books out there. There's the Punisher book, which are the last. These guys, they're experienced, but they're creaking a bit. And him racing the devil is him staying alive. Essentially, it's the big meaning for me around it.
Yeah, and I love that too because a lot of people were putting meaning into it that I hadn't initially intended. And honestly, as a songwriter, that's my favorite. When you write a song and it means something to you, and then somebody comes up to you and they're like, "Oh my God, like this song is amazing," and they tell you what it means to them, and you're like, "Holy shit, I didn't put that in there." But that's the magic of art in general. Is like, if I look at the Mona Lisa or you guys look at it, we're all seeing something the same but very different, right? Because it's your interpretation of art.
And we're imprinting ourselves on it, and we're taking there's so much going on. And
for me, like, I won't. One of my favorite musicians and artists of all time is Chris Cornell, and I remember an interview with him a long time ago. He was like, "I don't like to talk about my lyrics because then if I tell you what it meant to me, it takes away from what it meant for you." Right. Because that story was like, it was a shout out to my dad. And also I like the idea, honestly, that just this guy is like, this is what I'm going to do. He saw the devil when he was like a kid and he's like, fuck it. That's my life. I am going to beat that motherfucker in a race. Like, that's it. That's like, that's all he's got. He's like the money, he's won all this money so that he could buy this speedway. And like that race is his whole life. That's like, he doesn't care if he loses because he's like, the greatest of all time, whether they're boxers or racers or whatever, they just want to play the best. Whether they win or lose, of course, is like they want to win, but like just challenging, like, there is somebody that might be better than you out there. Like the greatest always want to take that person on.
So it was that kind of is so. I mean, like if you've watched any sort of sports documentaries about like Michael Jordan or like Muhammad Ali or anything like that, it's a mindset that a very tiny percentage of the planet can truly understand. Because it's a mindset that I've never tapped in, that whole super focus. Like, so when you were creating characters like this, did you do research? Did you, were you just writing what you felt, or did you think, oh, is there any races or any possible sportsman.
Even just for quotes, sometimes it's worth it,
Yeah, and I did research a lot of. That was the cool thing with Prairie Gods. Every story being different, I had to go and research some different stuff for No Man's Land. I'm a huge history buff, and World War I history is massive for me. So I didn't have to do much research for that because I was like, I got to just make a story based on like one of my favorite time periods. But
I mean, the trenches in that feel so real.
That's a powerful issue.
The dying in the mud moment in that is brilliant. Yeah. Really
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, when I was done drawing it, I'm like, this still feels sanitized based on like real stories. I mean, you know, but anyway, to your question though, I didn't base it on anyone specific, but I love that you brought up like Michael Jordan, all these like these athletes, and anybody really. Artists are the same way, where they're like people that tend to not succeed on a high level. They're afraid to lose. They want people to like them. They want people to like their art, or they want, to be liked, or they just, the idea of failing freaks them out. Whereas the greatest in the world are like, if there's somebody out there that might be better than me, I want to take them on. Yeah. If there's a challenge out there that terrifies me, like, well, I'm going to do it. And I would rather fail spectacularly than not try it. Right. And it was honestly probably I was exercising some of my own issues with that, where, it's first series I'd written, and I was taking some chances with the content and seeing if anybody was into it. So
I mean,
I was also like, if this blows up in my face,
it's not blowing up in your face, because I got to say, like, to know this is your first series you've written is a little bit astonishing, because it's so well crafted.
Well, thank you so much.
We do see the odd. I think Ice Cream Man does a similar thing, but has more of a sort of narrative strand. There's a few books out there that have that sort of single story with a strand that goes through it. But this really it has an individual voice. And I was wondering about the connections to you and music and how you write, because almost like music is one thing. It's banging in your ears. It's one thing, but then you're almost in a quiet medium. Comics is a quiet, private, just between you and the page medium. How did you cross over? I mean, I take it you're an old school comics fan, are you, etc.?
Well, I am for sure, but I'm, probably like the biggest influence on me was film. Like I love Highlander's like my favorite movie of all time. I love
that was
Highlander 2,
awesome.
Obviously. Highlander 2.
Of course, everyone's favorite Highlander 2.
Can I ask, is that what's influenced is your middle name? Is that?
No, you know what? I asked my mom, because I was like, "Did you have a crush on Shane Connery?" Like, come on, I didn't. But you know what? My parents were just like, they thought it sounded good,
right?
They were just like, and maybe it was in the back of their head somewhere. But I'm like, I'm okay with the comparison. If I can be that good looking at like 80 years old, like that's fine by me.
And that's single-minded is a good thing about him.
Yeah. Oh,
I love all these stories about him filming a scene and he couldn't be bothered to change his trousers, so they made it from golf trousers. So they made them shoot him from the waist up and stuff like that. He was a fucking dude.
Dude, that guy, he was a hard man. We'll put it that way. And the way he grew up and where he grew up, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But movies like Highlander, like I love that kind of B movie, very like handmade feel. Do you know what I mean? Like if you watch Highlander now, you're like, holy shit, they can't make that movie anymore. It's just, you've got a music video director making this movie about like, just really it's something that shouldn't work. These guys that go around chopping each other's heads off and to, become the ultimate whatever. You don't really know what the prize even is, which I love. And probably influenced this series in that way, because a big thing that I was trying to do with this series is bring the reader back into the narrative, where it's like, what do you think happens? Use your brain. I don't have to give you every detail. And I think we've gone down a weird road in the arts, both in comics, movies, where, I always use the original Star Wars trilogy as like the ultimate example. Like the cool thing about the first 3 movies is they left a lot of stuff up to you. What was Anakin's story? I don't like, in your mind, you were putting this stuff together, and they give you these little tidbits. They really don't matter to the larger narrative. It's just this cool kind of like, and when it's over, you're left with so much imagination about all this backstory. But then because the fans demanded it and they give it to us. They're like, well, if you want to know exactly what happened, here's exactly what happened and how it happened. And then everybody got pissed for the next 40 years because it didn't live up to their story.
But
you know,
fans shouldn't get what they want all the time. Sounds like a strange thing to say, but most of the time that fans are getting upset about something, it's because they were trying to give them something.
I think also that they listen to the wrong fans. They listen to the vocal fans on whatever social media platform is, de rigueur at the time. But I think the actual fans are just men and women.
Same with Origins of Wolverine. Don't need it.
You're right. Like it is, and it's a difficult thing because that no matter what you do, most people aren't going to like it. And actually, George Lucas has a great quote where he said, like, when he made the prequels, and initially they were, people didn't like them. They were like, this is not. But he's like, the story I make will never live up to the story you have in your head. Yeah. Which is all the reason to just do something different, make something new.
Yeah,
anyway,
totally.
Yeah. But in my mind, I was like, that's the shit that I loved. I love that, like, not everything's explained to you. And, like, you leave, you want to have a satisfying story. You can't leave so much out that people are like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I'm confused and lost. Like, you don't want that, but fill it in, like, what is Freddie Davis's motivation? And like, a lot of people filled in some cool backstory and how that hit them. And it's like, again, I like the idea of bringing the reader into it too. Like, it's about, you're reading books, you're watching movies, you're listening to music. It's about your imagination. Like, I created it for me. I know how I feel about it. You were asking about songwriting. Very similar, right? Like, I sit there and you write lyrics, write your music in that. And to your question too, of course, music goes from this very solitary thing where you're writing, and then it ends up on stage and it's raucous and it's awesome. I like the juxtaposition though, because it's cool. Comix is cool because it's like, it's a different end game. Like, no one's cheering for you, right? It goes out into the wilderness, into a comic shop. You see if people buy it, do they like it? Whereas music, you get immediate feedback. You get on stage, and if your crowds continue to get bigger as you go, it's a pretty good indicator that they're liking it. So, yeah.
Cool. Should we play bingo?
Yeah, I know you're looking forward to this, Tony.
So I didn't have the Todd Father already, but I've knocked off Frank Miller because, like you mentioned him, and Sean Gordon Murphy was another one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go slightly back and say Silvestri.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. Those '90s guys, like, my era was when comics really came into my world. Like, I read comics as a little kid, but like when I was like 11, in '91, that's when it was like Spawn and all that stuff was popping off, and it was just mind blowing stuff to me.
You're an Image guy, yeah.
A lot of those Image guys, like, very, very much was like a thing. My art's kind of moved past, like, it's gone in a different way, but like the 16-year-old Shane was like, make me exactly like Todd McFarlane. That's okay. 4 lines, nonsense everywhere. Yeah.
If we had his money, we'd be all right. Yeah, exactly. Sienkiewicz.
Let's see if see if I can bring it in.
Oh, he's got
shit.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Bill Sienkiewicz, like one of my, I have the Shadow. Literally, it's on my drawing table all the time.
Wow.
And his New Mutants run.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was feeling a little bit of Electra Assassin. We talked a bit about a few weeks ago about your old men faces. Are one of the things I love about a couple of the issues there, and they must be fun to draw like that as well. Yeah,
they're the best. Good looking people are boring to draw. They're just give me a hey, there you go. Give me a grizzled like old man to draw. Like, it's just, they're more interesting and you can get more out of it, right? Also, I just like. It actually goes back to my Nottingham days because when David and I, he had given me the story and we were working on character designs and stuff. He kind of wanted everybody to be like kind of good looking, and I'm like, no. Every single character outside Marion, because her beauty is kind of what makes her. You want her to look like a damsel in distress.
She's a famous beauty as well,
and she's also the most lethal character in that series, right? And that's part of her power, is that, like, she. You wouldn't guess, but she'd kick the shit out of any of those guys. But I was like, here's the thing. The sheriff is fucking super ugly. He's just got to be an ugly person inside and out. So, from the beginning of my comics career, I was like, it wasn't just about making people ugly. It was just like, make them interesting. I don't want to cast Brad Pitt in every role of every superhero until the end of time. It's like, I like interesting looking people. That's my favorite actors, like people like Harvey Keitel and, Michael Caine, like
Gene Hackman's another one I always think of.
Totally. I'm not going to say they're not good looking men, but they're interesting faces. It's not just everybody looks like Henry
Calvin
Cavill.
Klein models.
Yeah.
Totally, right? Because that's great. Superman's a good looking. That character is just like, he's just kind of this beautiful being. So you probably can't cast certain people in that role, but Sheriff of Nottingham, he doesn't have to be good looking.
I can't imagine people in the Middle Ages were particularly well fucking kept either. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Well,
wooden
I think
teeth,
it'd be
all that sort of thing.
This is this is off topic, but they'd be relative, right? Because you'd all kind of smell the same, and you're all living in the same sort of world. So, like,
we have that in a place called Croydon here. That's very like that.
Life expectancy is super low as well, wouldn't it? So you wouldn't get many people in there sort of beyond 30s, 40s.
Exactly, but when you were 35, you probably looked 75. So
And the thing is, we love like the historical epics, whether it be in comic book or movies, but we never want to smell them, do we?
Never,
never.
I don't know. Some of them.
Yeah, it depends, I suppose.
I'd give Olivia de Havilland a good smell.
That's as historical drama as we're getting in this one.
That's Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's best Robin Hood. I don't think there's any doubt there. And I've got two others. One slightly obscure. I'm going to say Neil Adams, but then again,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, I use his approach more than I ever was influenced by his style, because he's not just the notorious like tracer, but he used a lot of like really specific reference for stuff, and I went down a heavy reference. You can't tell with a lot of my art, oddly, but there's just a way that that Neil Adams would like construct pages and how he would use real faces and stuff like that to like incorporate into the art, and then of course turn it into all his own stuff. So I wouldn't put him in like my top 5, but his approach to art is actually probably closer to mine than any of the rest.
I took it more from, he tends to use a lot of big faces in panels, and we occasionally, especially with the best moustache in comics, to be fair, especially with that character in your comics, the guy with the sheriff, isn't he? You get a lot of close-ups of faces.
Well, Ned Reedy, like he's so I'm a huge Sergio Leone fan, Tarantino fan, right? Because Tarantino's a huge Leone fan, right? So, and his whole deal is those like super beautiful wide shots and then like a crazy close up. And I mean, if you want to get emotion from a human face, you got to get in tight. So I took a lot of my cues not from comics as much as some of my favorite filmmakers, because and Ned Reedy is like, he's the cowboy, he's the old sheriff, right? So it's those like super tight, like, I don't know, I love that kind of stuff. And in comics it's cool because mid-range shots get boring if it's all just 3/4 shots, but like pull the camera way back and then zoom it way in. I love that
I like
stuff.
what you do with the white in his moustache as well, because it's a zero color motion. There's nothing going on. I saw it done very badly in the Avengers books, in the new Doom book this week from Marvel. But the way that the moustache has that just nothing going on, it focuses you more tightly in on his face. I think it works really well. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, then you get the wrinkles, and honestly, like, I don't know, my art's always going to shift and stuff, and I did experiment with more kind of rendered whiskers and that, but it never looked right. But probably because of that exact reason, is that like then you really pull into the wrinkles in the eyes and like the shadows, right? And his mustache is rarely shadowed. It just kind of It's like, how like an artist they'll draw Superman's S without shadow, even if he's in shadow. Like it's those key features can just sort of like, you always see them there.
It's the beauty of comics, man. You can do what you like there.
You do whatever you want.
You can bend the rules.
And then the final one is slightly more obscure, and I expect you probably say no, but I'm going to say Dennis Cowan.
A little bit.
Aware of his.
I am aware, but I'm not the biggest fan, but I can see how you would get there though, for sure. A big one for me is Mike Mignola. I mean, I think.
Dude.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anybody past, that got into comics in the 90s and up are like Mignola is definitely in there for sure.
I think that use of like negative space as well, like darkness, and then something stepping out of it.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of Mignola. He says a lot with a little. I think for me, which I think is the old Alex Toth thing, isn't it? Pull out everything that you don't need, and that's all you need then.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like as a child of the 90s that loved all that Todd McFarlane stuff, it is like, it's terrifying to simplify, right? I mean, Frank Miller's done it to a point now where people are shitting all over him as he's gotten older, but like, I love the like audacity of just pulling details out until it almost gets hard to read, you know what I mean? But there's that fine line of like, you put so much detail into something, A, you'll never hit your deadlines, and B, it just is too much for your eyes. Pull too much out and it becomes boring. So like there is some sort of middle ground of, and I think Mignola, Mignola really like he really got onto something super unique, but like, man, he found this perfect line of like, it's almost not enough detail, but it's perfect. You know,
the same thing with your kind of the harsh features being overly rendered and none on the moustache. The same with kind of no detail, then loads of detail. If you do like a wide shot, there's loads of detail, and then you pull in tight and say there's very little or something. That kind of contrast really works, like visually. When Bob Fingerman was doing the Printopia book, he'd have panels just with the characters on white backgrounds, and it's so good.
Yeah,
I love it, and you know, and it's cool hearing you guys say that because as an artist, you're always like. So I don't know where this comes from, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't want to rip people off. You know, like if you open a page and it's just a character in a blank background, you're like, you know, but honestly, you just have to move through that. If you know you're doing it because you're being lazy, then you're being lazy. But if but there is something to be said for moving from a crazy detailed page to just some stark, you know, because you're trying to hit people emotionally. And I think where I've tried to go and where I'm going to continue to keep going, and I really get this out of Sienkiewicz's stuff, is like it's emotion. Like you almost feel like he might be drawing too fast. You know, it's like if it's an action scene, it's like you can almost feel how quickly he's doing it rather than thinking of how exactly it's going to look when it's done. You know, there's like a bit of controlled chaos in there. Yeah, totally. Right. Like you want to feel the artist in that, or like feel that if we're doing a fight scene, like if you watch two people fight in real life, you don't see every punch. You don't see every reaction. It's chaotic. It's hard to see sometimes.
It's ugly.
And then all of a sudden,
you know, it's not
very ugly.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. So I try to bring that in to, you know, sometimes I'm okay if it's hard to read a panel, especially if it is something chaotic, because it's more the aftermath, you know. But that's difficult in art because we, as artists, we want to draw everything. And again, we don't want to ever feel like we're ripping people off. But sometimes you're like, I've drawn entire backgrounds and just gotten rid of them because it's it's, you know what? It
doesn't work.
The thing that doesn't work. And this goes to detail as well, but perhaps more in a personality and writing style, is the thing that I find about your work, and it's what interests me about similar works, is it's about people. It's about him. It's about her. It's about that soldier in the mud. It's not about the whole situation. It's not about the whole of World War One, but it's about this in the same way that we are so in love with a book called Charlie's War over in England, Britain. Okay. It's about that soldier. It's about, you feel for him, and once you pin down that character, that's where the detail for me lies. Yeah. Did you want to speak about personality and character building? And I mean, do you go in with these people first, or?
Well, you know, I think I have them. I've got them in mind, but then as I write them, they kind of come alive, right? Like, you know, I've known lots of veterans in my life. My grandfather was in the Second World War. I've had a lot of family in combat, but also friends who, like, their grandfathers, like, literally were on the front lines. And, you know, like Bill Roberts, for instance, is like, he's like so many people, and whether or not they were even in war, if you talk to anybody that lived through like the Great Depression, they've got this kind of like, it's like chill about things. They're like, everything that's happening right now, it's not that big of a deal, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's his birthday, he's just gonna sit there and have a whiskey, and like, but then if they ever tell you stories from their life, you're like, holy shit, man, like how are you not like completely fucked for your whole life? But they just kind of, you know, I've known a lot of people like that, and because I've read so much history, those personalities come out where they might just be the sweetest old man walking out there, but the story that person has, right? Yeah. And because he would only tell this story to Freddie Davis, because I think you guys were talking about some threads that you were going to ask about, but one of them is like, how much do these guys know each other? Like somewhere,
that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Somewhere, you know, Bill Roberts and Freddie Davis are like, there's a kinship. Like, does he know he raced the devil? He at least knows that knows that crazy shit goes on in Broadacres. But it's that thing where probably a guy like Bill Roberts, if he was ever married, he may have never told his wife or his kids, but if he was going to hang out with an old friend, you know, they would talk about the war. They could talk about crazy shit, and they wouldn't have to get almost like emotional about it. It's like, this is how it happened, you know? Like, if you want to watch anything crazy, there's like survivor videos from the Titanic. And these people are like, yeah, you know, I was hanging off the propeller and I fell and like 8 people got crushed, and, you know, but I swam away.
I think it's become it's really important.
Generational thing, isn't it? There's a real generational sort of
mate, we
just had to get on with it. We just had to survive.
And it's never been more important than now, I think. And we've been looking at it with the anniversary of the Holocaust recently, and you've got these kids moaning about their Uber Eats not arriving, and you're hearing a story about, this is how I survived.
Yeah.
You think,
and I'll tell you this, like that's a massive conversation, because the problem with that is it wasn't always good that they didn't talk about it, because they never told their kids shit. They sheltered them from so much stuff that by the time you get to my generation and the next generations, well, you got sheltered from so many things that like you're only aware of your own problems, and it does feel big to you if that's all that you have. Like you can't I will never know what it's like to live through the Great Depression and have to like eat my farm animals and like eat weeds, and you know what I mean? Like I can learn about it.
The overcompensation. So you might have a parent, I've got experience of this, not in my own life, but someone I know, whose parent had a really hard time, didn't have a lot of stuff. So when they became a parent, they went completely opposite way and gave too much and was overbearing. And it's like, you've tried to give your kid more than you had, but you've gone too far with it. And the same thing plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we turn around and like blame millennials and you know, but it's like they only know what they know. They were given what they were given, and
as long as they buy your comics, Shane, I've got no problem with them, mate. That's
you know what? And it's cool. I mean, like, bringing it back to that. I mean, are they into this stuff? I also thought like introducing like some younger readers to kind of the things that I loved growing up, which was like serialized comics and one-off stories. And it was kind of neat because there was a couple of YouTubers that were definitely in their like early 20s that were just like, this is so different and great. I'm like, to you it is. To me, it's like the shit that
we're used to it, man.
30 years ago, that was like, even beyond that. But you know, I mean, Frank Miller changed the game with you know, The Dark Knight, and everybody's been chasing that drug since the 80s. So
and they just he ain't wrong.
Well, these strong story types kind of resonate through the ages. That old kind of story of the kind of the guy who's near the end of his kind of life career, but he's like absolutely top notch, and he's kind of like the old man who's still got all the skills. Those stories have been with us as long as sort of like we've been on the earth. Like it's always going to be around. And like when you see some of the more modern stuff that doesn't kind of key into some of this stuff, it's kind of like, oh man, I got the feeling it's always going to come back around these kind of stories you tell.
Totally, it's a great point, because they're archetypes, right? Like, you know, again, I'm like a complete history nerd. Like, I love like Roman and Greek mythology, and the same archetypes, right? Like, these are the oldest stories in the world in a way. Of like, you're right, that person that's just like they're older but they still got it, or they have something to prove still. And I
mean, you mentioned Star Wars again, the Joseph Campbell stuff that George Lucas, like it just resonates, and if you kind of like stick with that as a story thing, you can't really go too wrong.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I talked when we talked about issue 1, we called it it's a Western. Yeah, and I think that's something we really miss in comics these days is Westerns. The only place that does it is France. You know, the French love a Western, but when
people think about Westerns, though, don't they? They immediately think cowboys and all of that, and that's not necessarily what we mean by Westerns, is it?
Totally. Yeah.
You know,
that's cool that you guys picked up on that, because I mean, I grew up watching Westerns, like all that Clint Eastwood stuff, and you know, but it is that man with no name the mysterious drifter. And of course that shit got old and boring because like in the 60s and 70s, everyone did it to death. So that's, I mean, that's how art moves on. And then you go back to it 30 years later and you think it's like the coolest, freshest stuff.
Yeah.
I love that though. I mean, Freddie Davis is like, he's kind of your typical like man with no name sort of cowboy, right? He's whether it's vengeance or he's a very single-minded, like he's got this one thing and that's just like whatever it is, like that's what he's going to do. And then he gets it done and it's over. You don't need what happens to him after. Who gives a shit? Like,
the only person responsible for you is you. That's kind of how he is. You know, he stands up.
I love the idea of like, there's this old person who a lot of younger people just completely dismiss, and someone sort of says, "You realise who that person is, right?"
Yeah,
totally.
And like they're just the ultimate badass that no one could ever aspire to be, but they're just like they're seen as like a little old man or something like that in stories. I love that.
Totally.
The stories and the folklore of someone who's an absolute badass, but doesn't need to show it. Because
there's always that bloke in the pub who used to be a boxer and nobody knows, or there's all this sort of thing going on, isn't there?
There's that US Special Forces operator who's kind of like he's getting on, but like he's got like the big thick glasses and he looks like a total office nerd. And he was an absolute fucking killer. He was absolutely brutal. And if you see his medals, he's like stacked up on his chest.
Oh, dude, those are my favorite characters, right? Like those people, like you're right, they exist in real life, but they don't have to brag to you. Like if that's who you are, you don't have to brag. I mean, we are very aware of people in this world, whether they're world leaders or anything else, that just they can't stop talking about themselves because they hate themselves. They have that kind of like little micro dick syndrome, whatever, that they just got to be blustery. But the operators that can just, like Freddie Davis doesn't have to tell you he beat the devil because
he's done it. It's all he needs to know is
it's for him. It's not for anyone else.
It's we can't stop it. We can't ignore the old dudes in the village here. A few years ago, where I live in a little village, there's a dude, and I used to meet him and chat to him. We used to go for a coffee occasionally, and he was in his 90s. This dude, and he told me about how he was a crooner during with the likes of Arthur Askew and all these sort of people during World War II, and also that he was one of the early commando characters, and told me about being bombed, and he thought, the bombs are getting nearer, I'm gonna die any moment. And you think, no one takes any notice of this little shambling dude with his carrier bag every day. And do you know what? Every fucking time I saw him, he's telling me these stories that would blow my mind. Yeah, definitely.
And you're right, because like, people get dismissed because they're not young and, but they are the most interesting. Anybody that's lived on this earth for 80 plus years is going to have some stories to tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you're just touching and you're just touching the surface of this with this sort of tale a tale of tales, which is like building up. And I know obviously issue 5's coming out and the trade.
Is that the end? You're not going to end it there, surely, are you? Is that the end?
We'll see.
Okay. Sorry.
Don't get emotional yet. I'm about to get to the question. So the trade's out in May. The issue's just about to drop, I believe. Or is it?
Yeah, I think it's there's been all sorts of distribution issues in here in North America because Diamond is whatever, they don't know how to run a company. So and now Mad Cave switched to Lunar, and I know actually somebody reached out to me from the UK because they're not sure that they can get issue 5. But I'm guaranteeing if I got to just start mailing issues out when I get my comps, I'll just start mailing them out. But I mean, of course, you can read it online like Mad Cave. You get the digital copies.
Yeah, we get it because it's day date on Global Comics as well. They do that. Yeah,
nice. Because I think it's supposed to be out next week, but issue 4, like the Mines, was almost a month late here.
Okay.
So fingers crossed, you get to read it next week.
Okay, and then we get the trade, and then we get series 2. Yeah, is that how it's working?
Well, you know what? I mean,
what is next for you?
Yeah, what is next for you, man?
It's been a really cool ride for me because so the band, we were very active for about 18 years, and then like COVID hit, we came back and we just released an EP last year, played some shows. So the band's like, we've kind of wound it down a bit. Like we still play, but it's not like we used to tour most of the year. And I mean, I spent most of my adult life in back alleys and vans and dirty rock clubs, which I wouldn't trade for the world. But now, obviously, comics is really like kind of taking center stage, but also I'm getting back into acting. So in a couple of movies here, Just like, I love art. Honestly, guys, the creative process. My wife really, she blew my mind one day because I was getting down on, the world of the music industry is like, it's as fucked or worse than comics or film. Like, it's just, entertainment is just a tough industry in general. And I was kind of getting down about what I was going to do next for music. And she's like, well, you know what your problem is? You keep thinking of yourself as a musician and you're an artist, full stop. Like, you do whatever you want. And it just opened my mind and my world. And I realized the thing that I love the most is not comics or movies or music. It's art, period. And the thing that I just get off on the most is the creative process. Being that, like, you get an idea, you make it, you put it out into the world, and then you move on to the next one, right? Like, I love, and whatever that means. So if it's like, if I got excited to make my own movie, well, I'm going to go make a movie. If I got excited to do another album, if I have, it's not a spoiler, but I mean, I definitely have more Prairie Gods stories.
Is it going to be like a prog rock album?
I mean, you know, you never know.
Man, we want to see him, and I'm excited to see how you finish it with 5. I can't wait to see it. I don't think I've been this excited for a final issue for many years, man.
Well, that's very cool. It's really very cool to hear. Well, I'm not going to give anything away, but like the other issues, it's left to you to fill in a lot of blanks.
Okay.
Also, these stories are never meant to have a lot of closure, right? Because, like, what happens next? Well, if they greenlight a series, I might let you know some of it, or I might just give you some brand new characters, though. I have a great idea for Race the Devil 2, which I would seriously love to draw. I don't always start with the end, but this one I'm like, I woke up one day and the end was in my mind, and I'm like, oh shit! Like,
did you have to write it down immediately? What is your process for like drafting stories?
Stories, music, anything else, it's like, if I get the idea, I have to get it down. Like, Neil Young had a quote years ago of just like, if I get an idea, I don't give a shit if I'm like, it's Christmas dinner or it's like, I'm like, get the idea down, then like move on with your day. Because as long as I have it written down and I have it out, then I can revisit and start to dig into it for sure. And also there's just stories I wanted to tell. Like I said, the First World War stuff is just near and dear to my heart. It was cool to throw in a weird like sci-fi twist. But also I got to depict some of the stuff that I just, we're forgetting about that history and just how,
massively
horrifying, but also just like, holy shit, that happened. Like,
that happened. Yeah.
It's crazy.
That I think I described it when we talked about the book, is that incident where the door opens above him, in on the battlefield, and his spaceship is like the best sci-fi, the best sort of 1980s sci-fi cover that would have made me go, fucking hell, I need to read that book. What is that about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that stuff where it's just left field, just total left field stuff. And I'm a big fan of, like, you'll find out in the 5th issue here, like, I love a story within a story. I bore my wife with a lot of history tidbits, but like, there's a story in the First World War when on the German and Russian front lines where there's all these wolves. There's like a massive wolf attack going on, and they're picking off soldiers on both sides. And so for like this short period of time, the soldiers are like, okay, I know we got like a world war going on, but like, holy shit, we got to go fight these wolves. Like, we gotta
wow.
Like, I like stories like that because you're like, it's such a weird.
That needs to be
first of all. Well, honestly, first of all, it shows you the absurdity of war. That you're like, oh, there's actually, like, first of all, nature always wins. You know, you
nature
can run around with your guns.
No, really,
you can have nuclear weapons and all this stuff, but like, man, wolf tearing you apart is like about the most terrifying thing that you could think of.
Yeah.
So I love those kind of stories within stories. And again, issue 5 is. Speaking of wolf attacks, you'll hopefully you enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the way issue 4 ended, I was kind of like, what? Because what? I mean, one of the beautiful things about this series is you very skillfully sort of wrong foot the reader from issue to issue, but not in a way that loses them, which I think is a real skill. Like,
I appreciate it.
I didn't think I was going to get a World War I story. I honestly didn't think that was going to, you start with, Racing the Devil. You don't think a couple of issues later we're going into this, truly horrific sort of World War One sort of moment. And yet it just flowed. And yet it just completely, it made sense. Even when like the sci-fi bit happened, it was another one of those, what? But you're in it. I think because it's an emotional investment that you get.
I love that. I appreciate it because again, that's the kind of stuff I love. And also, I've got like, let's be honest, like I'm a rock and roller at heart. Like I've got a rock and roll soul. So if you tell me I can't do something, it's like fuck you, I'm gonna do it. Like and it was interesting. Some of the negative reaction I got from Prairie Gods was like kind of what I expected because some people were like, oh, you can't do that. Like you can't do that in a horror comic, or you can't. I'm like. Can't I? I can't. Because somebody actually mentioned, in a true anthology, all the stories have to take place in Broadacres, even if you're doing so they didn't like that story went out. But honestly, and it's very interesting. It's a very human reaction. Music's the same way, right? Like if you break a genre, everyone flips out, Beyonce makes a country album and everybody loses their minds. And it's like, she can do whatever she wants. She's an artist. I love being like, I don't really care what the anthology rules are. Yeah. This is interesting to me. And it's like, and again, if I can bring you along and it feels weird and out of place, but at the same time, it doesn't. So I'm glad that you got that because that was kind of the point Comix
is one of the places where you should, there should be no shackles. There should be no one should sort of say that's not how an anthology is done, because an anthology is done however you want to do it.
Comics is an open field. It's one of the few artistic things as well, which can be down just to a few people, even sometimes just one person to create it. There's very few other things out there that are like that. I think, totally. Especially in narrative storytelling.
Yeah, that is the beauty of comics. It's literally whatever you want it to be, right? I mean, the fact that a character like Batman can go from this like crazy vigilante, like gun wielding psychopath to the most kid friendly, like colorful superhero, back to like Frank Miller, and then everything in between. It shows you that like a well written character can have all sorts of, you can go anywhere with it if you tell a good, compelling story, and it doesn't have to be anything. It can be whatever you want it to be, and if you don't like it, luckily there are like about 1 million comic books coming out every week. So
I think literally that is true.
I think if your next book isn't Prairie Gods, then I'm certainly very interested to see what you come up with, because Prairie Gods itself is such a random sort of.
Do you have any plans to do any other stuff to guest on issues or anything like that? Has anyone said to you, will you do a fill-in on my story here?
I've gotten a couple offers for sure. It's just a matter of the time. But like, I would love to do more Prairie Gods, and we'll see how things go. There's a lot of ways I can do it too, right? So if Mad Cave didn't want it, well, I could offer it to somebody else, or I could
kickstart it or something.
Yeah.
Well, you said you were doing a couple of movies at the moment. What can you say what they are, or?
Not quite yet. They're small stuff. Like I'm just that was part of the reason we moved to Vancouver, because the film industry is here, and I'd like to get back into film more, because honestly, let's be real. If I could make Prairie Gods into a killer little like Netflix TV show,
HBO,
Because the point with another point, I know we're at the risk of going over time here, but
no, go for it.
That's right.
The one of the constraints I put on myself with Prairie Gods is that, like, in our era now, like, okay, let me back up. In comic books, like in entertainment in general, the only place that you could ever see crazy special effects and like spaceships and stuff was comic books. It was very difficult for movies to do that stuff. So you can just like let your imagination go crazy in comics and just do things they could never film. We're like in a whole different era now, where it's like anything you can think of, you've seen it in a movie. Like there is there is absolutely no restriction. So one of the things that I did with Prairie Gods was that I wanted to go the other way and put some heavy restrictions on, like, if I couldn't film this in a super cheap like TV show budget, it doesn't go in. Because that's why, like, even the devil's costume, right? Like, he's not on fire, and it's not he's like, he's a dude in a helmet. Because I'm like, if they film that in the 70s, they probably go to like a used sporting goods store and like come up with his costume, right? And
but then it becomes iconic because of that.
Yeah, totally, right. And it's almost like if you have too much free reign, it can get. It was just a challenge I wanted to put on myself. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I mean, I like that shit. Like I like that when they were doing stuff in the 70s and 80s, like you were so restricted that you had to be creative with how you designed stuff, how you made it work. And so that was the point with all the kind of character designs. And even if it was going to get really paranormal or whatever, you could shoot it on a low budget. That was always my kind of.
I think I see issue 3. Issue 3 could almost be a stage play.
Totally.
It's that sort of, it's that little world, isn't it? It's just that field and what happens around it, really.
Which, if you were a soldier, that would be your world. It would be this big, you have your head down, shit's blowing up everywhere. Even when people are getting like eviscerated next to you, like you're not seeing things 100 yards away. Like everything is, you're right. That's why like what Blackadder season is the First World War one? Is that the last one?
The fourth one. Yeah. Fourth.
That's a great series. But they capture that like smallness, right? I mean, because that's what you get is this is your world, this little tiny place. Even if you're going out into battle, if you survive, I mean, you're
that last episode where they go over the top is incredidly strong.
Iconic. Well. It's absolutely iconic. Absolutely.
Look at you bringing the British TV references.
Oh man, come on. You know what? I have watched an obscene amount of like Time Team while I've been drawing, and like all these old
episodes. Amazing. I didn't think we get a Time Team reference. Time Team reference on here for probably about 100 episodes. Before we let you go, though, I do want to just chip into like art process. We love a little bit of art process here, and your art is so like we've talked about the influences and stuff. Let's get into like actual. Are you original art, digital? What do you use for your art?
Both. Yeah, I'm both. So for this series, all the covers are pen and ink. All the interiors for this series, except for maybe a couple of pages, were on my iPad. So I have my process is like and a lot of that is like full disclosure. It's like deadline based, where I'm like, I knew. So especially this last year, my wife and I were moving, and there's just like there was a lot of life stuff going on where we were in different places, and I was like, if I'm going to be able to do these deadlines, I can't have my whole setup, and it just takes longer with pen and ink. Yeah. And I was also just like, I'm not precious with that stuff. I'm not going to be able to sell all of those pages anyways. And it's like, digital's fun. I prefer pen and ink because it's like, I just like the art mess of the whole thing and kind of, but I emulated all of my tools, which are very few. I only have 2 or 3 main tools that I use for inking. I just have those emulated on my tablet. So there's
what
I don't
program
use.
Do you use? Are you
I'm just using Photoshop.
Oh, Photoshop.
Yep. Sure. Okay. Photoshop. I'm like, what I found? I'm like, I don't need a lot for digital stuff. Like I think people that are like predominantly digital and you can really go down some rabbit holes with that shit. Whereas I'm like, I just need it to do what I can do on paper. That's it. So I have like, again, there's probably 4 Photoshop brushes that I use, and that's really it. And actually sometimes to get the right effects, I'll draw them on paper and then scan them in, because there's just things you can't do on any tablet. Like you can't do what whiteout does, and you can't do what a marker does exactly. So
that makes total sense.
Yeah, so
there's some of your pages I totally see. Like it surprises me to know that most of the interiors are all digital. Do you know what I mean? Because it's such a natural. I kept thinking the original page of this must be an inky mess of beauty. Do you know what I mean? There must be like white out and everything. The best kind of original art pages. Do you know what I mean?
And that's if you see my original art, that's what it looks like. It is more white out than ink. Mostly like because I use it to draw too, right? So you get in there and just like you can. I've really kind of gone to this place where I'm like almost sculpting with ink and whiteout, where you're just kind of working it until it looks. And then the beauty is like then you scan it in and you bump the contrast up, and all of a sudden it just turns into comic art. I love that.
Incredible, isn't it?
One example.
Do you sell it? Do you sell your original art? Or?
Oh yeah.
I do actually. I'm going to put some more up. Now that the series is done, I just revamped my website, shaneconneryvolk.com. There's like 2 covers in there right now. I just sold one.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put a bunch of art. And also, I don't do commissions anymore. I just draw what I want and sell it if people want it. So
It's a good attitude like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do conventions as well? You're not doing. Do you ever sit?
I've got one coming up. I'm doing Emerald City in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
have you done
not
that
a whole? No, I've never done that, but it's like 2 hours from my house here, so that's nice.
Yeah, it's one
of
the ones
I've
heard a lot of good things about.
Yeah, I have too. That one. Yeah, our buddies, the Santos Sisters guys, are going to be there. Greg and Fake. If you're anywhere near them, they're good guys. Nice. Yeah.
Well, where should I go in the UK for cons?
Well,
that's a hard one.
That's a question at the moment.
Yeah. That is a question.
I asked a sensitive question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it
depends. There's no big London
the
one
biggie,
now.
but like obviously from traveling from where you are.
Yeah.
So a lot of our cons have either gone Funko or they've gone Zine. That's the two sort of extremes, really. There's no big one in London anymore, which is the shame.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the Lakes, which is very out on the limb, it's up in the northwest, and then you've got Thought Bubble in Leeds, in near Leeds, which is a little more zany now. It's not sort of dedicated. There's no really sort of Baltimore's or those sort of conventions over here at the moment. We'll wait. Something will come around.
Well, you know what? I love the UK, and my wife and I want to go back there. So maybe I just like pile in a bunch of comics into like a van or something. I'll drive around and I'll let you guys know.
That's quite common. Yeah. I'm doing Baltimore in October. But
nice.
I think you dig that one, man. If you haven't done that one before, I think that'll be up your street.
Yeah,
it's got Mike Grell and Howard Chaykin and all these sort of guys.
That's cool.
Very nice.
Yeah, very cool. Honestly, I'd love to do more. Up till this point, it's just been a lot of like, I go from drawing and writing to touring, or now like being on set. So I can't always make them work.
There's a lot of live stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
There has been a lot of live stuff. So we're starting to like, my wife and I made a deal that we would never settle down. We always ramp up. That's kind of our life. So, but we are getting more like settled in like, this is where we're going to be for a while. So I think it's going to get easier to hit up more cons and that kind of thing. So,
man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you know what, to end the question that you asked about how I like art process, you know what, it is a lot of like, I do take a bit of the Jason Sean Alexander technique of just start drawing. Like I'll plan shit, but like my layouts are super loose. I like make sure that you want your characters in a way and pay attention to where the speech balloons are going to be. But like, then it's just kind of like start drawing and see.
Yeah, it's fun.
Especially digital. Leaning into digital is fun because you're like, I don't really have to be too precious if this character is too big. I can just and that is kind of the fun part about it is you're like you don't have to plan as much. You can kind of have a bit more fun and just sort of get in there and do your thing. So
good stuff,
man. So before we get you on the links, there's one question I have about issue 4. Why the choice of sort of pink sunglasses for one particular character?
Very 90s video.
I love it.
It was a specific color choice. I thought that is so specific. What?
You know why? Because no bad guy would dress like that. Like he's a weird person. He's a very like. So I drew. I wish I had it around here. I drew a cover for another Mad Cave book. It was just a variant cover, and somewhere I had seen these like red glasses. And I put them on this character, and I sent that cover off. And I'm like, man, I like those. Those glasses are so weird. They're just like weird. And so I was designing that character, and he was supposed to kind of have that, like, he's like an older dude, like kind of that explorer type, but also like eccentric and maybe crazy.
A little bit of synthwave.
Yeah. That's a good pull. But I was like, I just thought like, if you're making bad guys, you can go super cliche and just make it, but being that like there is, because I'm a child of my childhood is from the 80s and maybe something in my brain was like, that's what like you would maybe see on Saturday morning cartoons with a villain where you're like, this person does not look threatening.
There's a bit G.I. Joe cartoon there.
He's got a like bright blue jacket and his pink glasses. I just honestly, it was a design choice that I was like, why not? I don't know.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah. The glasses so aggressively 80s, sort of like almost skier, snowboarder, fucking
totally. Absolutely. And then it worked out. I hadn't planned it, but then spoiler alert, when they all get nuked at the end, it's just his glasses that stick around. Everything else gets eviscerated. So
amazing. Another one of the million reasons to reread the book now. So obviously issue 5's out soon, Trey's is out. But where can people find more of your work and
well, again, my website's a good place to start, ShaneConneryVolk.com. My social links are there. I'm really active on Instagram. So Art of SCV is my art page. Shane Connery Volk is like my personal page. So I post quite a bit there. Crazy shit's going on with X. I interact with it, but like
we've moved more over to Instagram.
We don't get anything off there.
Well, and I realized that like I was doing the TikTok stuff for a little bit, but I'm like at some point I'm like I don't really like this, and I don't have to do it. So
yeah.
But no, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm still on Facebook because weirdly people are still on Facebook, and that's fine. So I post a lot of the same stuff, but the main social media you can find me on is Art of SCV and Shane Connery Volk on Instagram. And then hit up my website. I'll put more stuff up there for sale, and
excellent.
Definitely. We can't wait to see more and see what the final issue of Prairie Gods is like.
Well, I'm pumped to see what you guys think. I'm excited. I'd love to come back and chat about it anytime.
Don't be surprised if we send you a link going, by the way, we've talked about the latest issue on this episode.
Yeah.
I would love that. And awesome. You know what? I'll tell you this. If you want more Prairie Gods, you just hit up Mad Cave and say like fucking greenlight it. Let's go. You know.
Come on, Mad Cave.
There you go, Mad Cave. If you're listening to this.
Let's do it. Awesome. Thanks, guys, Shane, this was a blast. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, nice one.
No, it's been great,
dude.
Yeah.
And there you go. Another
good stuff.
If you haven't heard of Shane's work before, then definitely check it out because
it needs to keep going with comics. Forget about this music and movie malarkey.
Both Nottingham Prairie Gods are on Global Comics.
Yeah. And the problem is he's made very good comics, so we want more of that. But but definitely check him out and his artwork and everything else. And
your hair looks like you've put lemon juice in it this week, Dan. It's a lovely colour under the light there.
It's kind of like got a grey thing going on.
Oh, no, you can't tell. It just looks shiny.
It is.
Yeah, no, it's not just.
No, not even a little
goes
bit.
in the hair. That
no.
I use it on the face.
Yeah,
that's on the face to keep you young.
You do have a great complexion.
Face, neck, and chest. Yeah.
I keep saying that to the wife, but she's reticent.
You never say that to the wife. You're scared as shit.
You're right.
We laugh as Dan's currently looking over his shoulder.
The old gag's back. I could do it in this room.
I will say that though. We hope that everyone out there had a wonderful Valentine's Day.
Byron, wasn't it? Byron.
Yeah. And even if you didn't have a significant other, we hope it was an amazing day because we love you all. So, and I'm saying at the middle part of the show now because
and he's shrugging his shoulders.
All about the love on this show. All about the love. Speaking of things that make us want to shout, do we have any shout outs this week, gents?
Love makes you want to shout. I've got a few. Yeah. So everyone, there's a drink and draw on the 21st. 7 p.m. So that's the 21st of February, 7 p.m. onwards. Let me know and I'll send you the link. I'm going to put it in the Slack probably today or tomorrow, so that'll be Monday or Tuesday. So come along. Everyone is welcome to that, by the way. Don't think you have to be on the Slack. Don't think you have to be part of the community already. Just come along. You can just sit and listen, and we talk shit, and everyone draws. And
then you have to turn your camera on and just sit there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good. It's always a laugh. Ragtime Soldier, the successor to Charlie's War, is now live on Kickstarter, coincide with 50 years of battle. This is we just talked about Charlie's War, didn't we? So Pat's Opus Magnus, Ragtime Soldier is it's a short comic that appeared in a Dundee comic, pre-COVID. and I will give it a no prize, or I'll actually give a prize to the first person to spot my name in that comic as I appear in it. But also, we've got, if you go to the Tribute Press Substack, there's an interview with Mr. Thorpe this week. Check out the Substack for that. That's
a good one. Yeah, read that.
The previous one with Cliff, really good as well. Both really informative and really interesting. Go out to your comic shop and buy American Nature Presents issue 2. It's a combination of comics and articles. Really good stuff. Dave Sims got a page in it. So Dave Sims draws the Santos sisters. So it's by the Santos sisters, guys. And one of my favorites is a strip called The Shag Shed from Pat Rook. I think it means something different in America. And it's got another column by me. I'm really chuffed to be in that. So there you go. They're my ones.
Nice one, T.
Nice. Dan, what have you got?
We still doing we're doing the cover club in the Slack.
That's really good, man.
Yeah.
Explain it for people who don't know.
So we've expanded now the cover club. So each week we're picking out a comic cover, and as artists, designers, creators, whatever, we're kind of breaking it down and discussing it, doing draw overs and seeing what works for the cover, what doesn't. We've been positive so far, but someone might offer up a cover which we're going to deconstruct and we might be a bit more negative on. But so far it's all been really positive and constructive stuff. It's really, if you're an artist and your thing is making comic book covers and you're interested in the craft, breaking down some good ones is a great way of sort of informing your craft and doing better yourself. And there's stuff that people have picked out that's like, I would have never made that observation, and it's all I'm all the more richer for it. There's a second part which we're doing a challenge which started this week, is where someone will give a brief of a cover of a famous comic cover and write that down, and then as artists we've just got to thumbnail it, design the cover for what we think it would look like based on that brief, and at the end they post the actual cover. And this week it was the Fantastic Four with the coming of Galactus, and the different sensibilities of like way artists have thumbnailed and planned this image over the original was quite something. I think someone mentioned the fact that at the time no one knew who Galactus was, but now not having an idea, now we have an idea of Galactus, you wouldn't not put him on the cover if he's going to be a threat.
Yeah.
So all the modern ones have Galactus on it.
Yeah, one of my favourite runs of comics ever, mate. That is, I think also one of the best runs of comics ever. That little period of FF, incredible stuff,
lovely stuff. Yeah. So if you're interested,
people are trying to copy that still.
Yeah, mate, it's the groundwork on it is so fucking strong. I think that's why we kind of feel there's a frustration whenever you see a Fantastic Four film, and it's like you've come from that, man. What's happening? But time will tell in the new one. I know people have got different opinions on that. I'll move on from that pretty quickly. So if you go to the Awesome Comic Podcast Substack, on a Monday we post the episode up on there, and on a Friday we do the cover club. And anyone's welcome to join the cover club. Just join the Slack. There's a link to join it on the bottom of the Substack. I'll keep renewing that link, so you just click it and win.
Yeah.
We've got a Kickstarter, Blam and Glam, that by Richard Morgan, that's running at the moment. That's actually destroyed its target. That's got a few more days to run. Where is it? I can't see where it is because I've got the window messed up. We're at 11th of Feb. That's gone. No, it's still funding though, but you can get that.
Oh right, okay.
I fucked that one up. Back to the Lawless Comic Con.
No.
Yes, here we go. Ready? 24th, 25th of May. Do you know the location?
No, please tell me.
It's Doubletree by Hilton Hotel, Bristol.
No.
B516NJ.
Wow.
You're thinking, can I buy a trader's pass? No, because they're all sold out. But you can buy tickets to the event.
It's like a conversation in his own head.
If you look in the dictionary under the word professional,
there's no mention of me.
It's just a picture of Dan Butcher, isn't it? It's just
two more things. We've got we're still running the competition of the signed the Press Guardian Clock 1940s comic put out by our friends at the Green Archer. Go on our Instagram. We'll do this another post on New Week. What is the name of the clock's sidekick? You don't have to read the comic to find that out. There's a internet, and you can Google that.
There's an internet.
Yeah, you can put that question in, and you get an answer, and then you get the comic winging its way to you.
I can just put a question into the internet, and it'll give me an answer.
There seems to be a skill that not many people seem to have in the world, because they'll ask you, "How do I do this?"
And I see boobs.
Yeah, boobs are on there, I've been told.
Oh, okay.
So we've got High Vis Comic Con, Saturday the 21st of June 2025, Kings Heath, Birmingham, UK. Go check that one out. High Vis Festival. Go check it out.
Nice. I think that'd be quite a good con, actually. High Vis. I think that looks pretty cool.
You have to wear a high vis vest to get in.
Yeah, you can only get in if you're in them.
Yeah, the lights are off.
It's like the setup at MCM. You can only get in if you've got a yellow vest on.
Yeah. got heavy.
You know.
Yeah.
Heavy goods vehicles driving around all the place. Got to be on your toes.
Right, from all of that fantastic stuff to the recommendation section of the show, chaps, we've got comics to talk about. What comics do you want to talk about? Tony, what do you want to talk about?
This one jumped the queue. I've got a load, so yeah. Stop chasing me, everyone. I've got a load of your comics to talk about. This one definitely jumped the queue. God bless it. Booty Leg Comics, written with art and editing and published by the app pseudonym of Don't Sue. But if you're a bit of a detective, you'll see that on the back cover it's actually printed by those fuckers at Black Ink Comics. So, simply put, this is a comic of forced degeneracy on a range of sex acts on modern cartoon favourites. This is fucking outrageous. I love this. I read this, sat in Cafe Nero because I'm posh fucker, giggling to myself reading this. So they're not the Simpsons, they're the Gimpsons.
Oh, God.
The first story is Jack the dog is about Jack the dog and Frank the human in Arse Venture Time. Right? Yeah, there's no subtlety involved here, gentlemen.
No.
A lot of actual sausage eating.
I'm not going to ask you too many more questions about it.
There's a lot of actual sausage eating, and then Ladyboy Unit. I haven't seen Adventure Time, so I can't tell you how near this is. I'm not the sort of person who would watch that sort of rubbish. But Ladyboy of Unicorn turns up, and it all becomes a four-way sex act. Includes the characters. One character who looks a bit like a TV screen. Is that right? One of them's like a fucking got a square face.
BMO.
Oh,
there's a little cut.
That was a trap.
Thing.
That was a trap.
Well, my son used to watch that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Use your son
because I was watching it as well.
It escalates to another, from one immoral, degrading incident to another. Dick and Corky starts with masturbation and turns the narrative towards cocaine. Lenny and Carl, who are clearly meant to be Beavis and Butthead, end up in a BDSM torture dungeon with Marge and Homer. They were their next door neighbours. Of course, they live next door to each other. Sponge Bong, more wanking, and airtight on a snail. Look up airtight on Urban Dictionary if you don't know what that is. You kind of get the gist of that. I'm not going to extend this. There's enough there for those who wish to buy this will buy it. Me being one of those sort of people. If you go to Black Ink Comics with an X, blackinkcomics.com, and become a flagpole today. There you go.
Pardon?
That's my first one. Booty Leg Comics.
Wow.
Moving on.
Dan, what's yours?
I've got Mr. Higgins Comes Home.
Okay.
Written by Mike Mignola.
What happens in that?
He does in fact come home.
Oh, spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm not reading it.
But it's not his actual home.
Oh,
what?
His metaphorical
twist.
Does he go to someone else's house? And then
yes,
he's a bit like that time I was really pissed and went to where I used to live with the Chinese takeaway. And,
don't talk about Chinese takeaways with Dan because he'll flashback.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, like some kind of old boozer, and they finally go back to the pub. They've not been all. It's like you've come home, like he's back in the place he should be. So we've got written by Mike Mignola, art by Warwick Johnson Cadwell. I referenced Dean Beattie. He kind of like the art style reminded me of.
Yeah, they're contemporaries. I think. Yeah.
It's.
Oh no! What's he doing now?
Fuck was that? There's a noise outside. Sorry. So.
What has happened to you today?
Is he being haunted?
You obviously didn't hear that, but there was a massive...
dad is haunting him. That is what's happened here.
He's actually moved away.
What's he doing now? He's run off.
I don't know what's happened. Sorry. There's a massive
you
bang
okay?
outside the door. Yeah,
Are you
fine.
Okay?
Things were happening
You're
in the
not
Butcher
subject
household.
to a home invasion. Oh, yeah, at the time.
Okay, the synopsis. Let's bring this back. Preparations begin at Castle Golga for the annual Festival of the Undead, as a pair of fearless vampire killers question a man hidden away in a monastery on the Baltic Sea. The mysterious Mr. Higgins wants nothing more than to avoid the scene of his wife's death and the truth about what happened to him in the castle. However, these heroic men sworn to rid the world of vampire scourge inspire Higgins to venture out and end the only suffering he really cares about, his own. This is a classic send-up of vampire stories. See Mignola teaming with British eyes. It's really fun. I didn't know anything about it before I kind of went into it, and I didn't realise it was a bit of a send-up. If you haven't seen Nosferatu recently, this is a great kind of counterpoint to it, because it doesn't take itself too seriously, but the humour is absolutely pitch perfect. Mignola's kind of writing this is so spot on with this. I was just really genuinely amused. And when I often read horror humor comics, you're kind of like, okay.
Especially if it's a longer tale. I find humor for me is normally works better with like Instagram comics or something that's got like a short, almost newspaper strip sort of bang, bang, and then a joke sort of thing.
But this one, like, it's got some genuinely really funny moments in it. I really enjoyed it. The fact that I didn't know what it was going in, I think might have assisted that. So I've taken that from you in this review. You know about that. But genuinely, check it out. It's really fun. I would read this kind of title every day of the week. It was really fun.
Oh, nice. I'll give that a go. I don't own that one yet. It's part of my Mignola readathon, but I must get that one.
It's not like a kind of classic comic art. It feels like kind of like an art student might kind of work in this style.
When did it come out, that one?
It came out in 2017.
Oh wow, more than that. Wow. Okay.
56 pages. Yeah, fun. I mean,
with
really
Mike Mignola, you could say about so many different works. What year did that come out? And all of it feels contemporary, but could have been released 25 years ago or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, mate, totally. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to check this one out as well.
Yeah, it's quite amusing. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to take anything away from you, but do give it a read.
Yeah, right. Nice. Speaking of humour comics, I follow an artist on Instagram, Meg Adams, art by Moga. That's Moga, and she does a lot of it could be one panel, it could be a couple of panels. It's usually jokes and things like that. She's also quite open and honest about a lot of mental health things and stuff that she's been through. Some of it, but in a really effective and touching way. And always with the disclaimer of you're about to see something that talks openly about. She has talked about suicidal thoughts and things like that, which when I'm about to talk about the book I'm about to talk about, it seems like a complete juxtaposition. It seems like it's not related, but there's always I was drawn to her work because it's clean, crisp, and it's just got a nice sort of sense of humour, and her work is predominantly sort of humour comics, and it's usually about the day-to-day of her and her friends, or like her and her husband, Carson. And I discovered that there was a book, it came out a couple of years ago, called Why You Like This, which is so I picked it up on Amazon, shame on me, for about a tenner. This is from Andrews McNeil Publishing. So and basically join vivacious extrovert Meg and level-headed introvert Carson as they traverse modern life, flying by the seat of their pants. It's dorky and downright relatable. And it really it's when you talk about these sort of strip comics, and I think with this is a perfect example of it. They are almost these sort of humour books. If they're done right, they are the ultimate coffee table books. They're the ultimate, or we sometimes sort of say, oh, it's the book you take into the loo. Do you know what I mean? You have a bit of a laugh, because you can pick it up at any page and you get something from it. Do you know what I mean?
Just can go, yeah.
It just can, and this is a collection of strips that obviously she was doing for many years. It's consistent. If you look at what she's doing now, the whole book is consistent. Like it doesn't really change. The humour's the same, and the book. There's a couple of moments. One thing, as I said earlier, you know, she's quite very honest and quite open on the Instagram. And I was thinking, am I going to see some of this in this book? You get a couple of hints at it, but the book is more. Why You Like This is more about just straight up humour comics about day to day, and there's lots of relatable things. There was certainly, it's a book as well. My partner Jo, she doesn't read comics, but there was so many pages where I was like, look at that. That's us, that is. Look at that one. That's us. Do you know what I mean? There's so many, you know, and there's lots of, not in that kind of way, Tony.
I know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love those sort of, the slice of life books that are genuinely just relatable. Like the look that you give someone, you know, you see like a cute dog on the street and then you look at each other, but the way it's framed, you're like, oh, I've had a moment like that. And I think that's the reason why some of these creators are head and shoulders above so many others doing it. I mean, on Instagram, she's got like almost 500,000 followers. You know, she's been doing this for a long time. But I genuinely, it's one of those people that if you follow on social media, the ones that pop up are usually a joy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's lovely stuff. So I didn't know I had there was a book out. I hope there will be another book. It's a lovely sort of it's not quite a square little book, but it's definitely proudly going to go on the shelf. Like, there's a few jokes that one of the one make me laugh is it's just a couple of panels. She's like, oh, I've trained my mum to use emojis, and then there's a close up of a text message that's just from her mum saying, my cousin just died. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, it's that kind of like just funny, like little humour like that. I loved it, and I'm going to reread it. I have reread it several times. So Why You Like This by Meg Adams, definitely a creator. If you just want something a little lighter.
Sounds great, man. Yeah,
it's good stuff. Tony, what have you got for us?
So last one, this one, Gorehaus. Gore Follows Disjunction, issue 1. I backed this one on Kickstarter, and then I couldn't fucking find it. You know, you get a digital only Kickstarter, and I saved it, and I just forgot about it. And then I was looking through Kickstarter and thinking, where's this book? Where's this book? Oh yeah, I do definitely remember downloading that, and I looked it up. But it was only the end of last year it came out. I want to just segue slightly. So, on the back, he dedicates it to Piskor, Piskor, and I can't remember who I was having this chat with the other day, but I think we talked a bit with Joe about this, Joe Siraki, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, about this, about there was so many people, there was such a rallying cry, cartoonist kayfabe, for small press, underground, indie, outlaw, whatever you want to call it, that it's such a shame. And this is the second book I've seen this week that's dedicated to a Piskor. Dan, you and I did one that was by way of Piskor when we did your new comic.
Also, as kayfabe over lockdown, a lot of people took solace in that, and like what happened to him, it's awful, and it doesn't seem like there's been any kind of reckoning or recompense or anything. It just feels like a kind of an open wound. It's horrible.
It really is. I was chatting to Bob Fingerman about it the other day, and he said he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
No.
And we're gonna see more tributes and
he's got his own convention coming up and everything, and having spoken to his sister about him and everything, and I just think it's worth mentioning again. We forget these things, don't we? The comic world moves on, and we go to the horrors of, I don't know, someone like the Gaiman or something, and we forget the horrible thing that happened to him for nothing. He didn't commit a crime. He didn't do anything like that. And I think him and Jim Rugg really created, and Tom Scioli to a certain extent really created something that it certainly inspired me and Falpy to do stuff. For example, they talked about a comic, and this is a dude, Thomas Sluzalak. It's a German dude. He's just a dude in Germany making comics, and he so, you know, a million miles away, he's thanking Piskor for his, you know, I think it says a lot. Anyway, this is a horror comic. It owes a lot, I would say, to the 1990s and 1980s video shop horror shelves. Really interesting cartooning style, really overblown, over the top. There's a little bit of the Leatherface, but if Leatherface was a sort of super jacked wrestler, but also it's got this sort of central rescue your girlfriend kind of storyline to it. Really fun. So after a sort of there's a prequel incident in the comic. Starts off with a sort of a flash forward, as it were, of a big fight. I think it's always a good idea to start a comic with a fight or something action orientated. But then it flashes back to two hippies, Lucio and Daria, and they're out in the countryside at night, being sort of generally in love and spending the night under the stars camping. But Lucio later is woken up. He's laying on the blanket on the floor on his own, and there's a bat flying over his head, and Daria's gone. And he hears what he thinks is Daria's voice shouting for help in the distance. So he follows this voice through the woods into a graveyard, and he hears it coming from this grave. So he uses his fingers and he claws the earth out, and he finds this massive beetle just looking at him, who apologizes for faking his girlfriend's voice, but is in fact there to help him. And this beetle is a very sort of sexy witch from hundreds of years ago who's been killed and transformed her body into a beetle that's grown using magic and is in there. And the beetle says, I can help you get your girlfriend back, but you have to drink from my tail teat thing that hangs down. This is sort of say, I think so, fucking hell. So he has some of this, and then he says, oh, of course, also I've got to stab you in the face and attach myself to your face. So it's almost like the back of this beetle, the shell, almost the back armor of this beetle, it becomes his face, and it goes off from there, and it's really good. I would say stuff like involved in it is WWE. He looks like a WWE wrestler.
There is with the story itself, and I know Tony, you won't know this reference, but it's very much there was an old video game on the Mega Drive and stuff called Splatterhouse.
Oh, okay.
This? And it was very much the main character, his girlfriend is taken. He puts on a mask. It turns him into this sort of thing, and then you have to fight through monsters, that kind of thing. So yeah, I can see.
Yeah, there's a little bit. I can imagine there's a little bit of that, man. Yeah, totally. Like real roided out looking geezer.
Yeah,
he is. I would say there's something of the headlopper about it as well. Maybe Humongous from Mad Max 2. I see a bit of that. Is it Lord Humongous?
Yeah,
the one with the sort of hockey mask. A little bit of Full Moon Studios as well, which we always like a little bit of that. Really has legs. It's really lovely design. He's got that sort of action feel, like books like Headlopper, really Ultra Mega, something like that. Real great visuals, great design eye, outrageous action. And it's done with that sort of lurid colour, but in almost like a flat colour, almost like an animation cell at moments. That sort of big bright colours, but flat. There's no sort of flare use or anything like that on it. I know we were talking earlier about an eyes. What are we doing about that Batman eyes? So everything is flat. You can barely see what's going on in the panel. But yeah, go and get it. I immediately went and he's done another comic called Shaolin Grandmaster, which I also expect to be excellent. So I immediately went and ordered that. In fact, I just got a notification on my phone saying it's in the post. So if you go to Instagram, it's Thomas THOMAS _ as SLUZALEK Sluzalek. If you go to the website roninx.de, and you can go to Comic Dojo Shop .bigcartel.com where you can buy it online. I'm waiting for issue 2 to hit Kickstart, which I think is meant to be. But great first issue, really fun. The epitome of the small press thing that we're looking for, and a nice nod to cartoonist kayfabe on the back cover.
It also does another thing that, like Wolf and Batsy.
Very Wolf and Batsy, man. I immediately thought Wolf and Batsy when I read it. Yeah.
But also those wonderful faux adverts, like within the interior. You got an advert for like things you can order. Send in a coupon. Send in a little coupon. You can get some chewing gum, or you can get a fake machete.
Cool.
Sort of stuff. I love it when people, because as soon as I see that, I know that a creator has seen and read a comic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's something to the way those things were designed and put together, and the little coupons and the.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you kind of saw those like the Three Musketeer bars. You think, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
We did a bit of Sea Monkeys and we did a bit of that with Atomic Hercules as well. Yeah, we loved all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So
yeah, very good, man. Really impressed with it. Gorehaus. I can't remember for the life of me why I backed it. Someone must have said to me, "Go and look at this one and back it," or I just sort of randomly saw it. But it was one of those ones that was worth it. Yeah.
I scanned through it. It looked fucking great.
Really good. Yeah.
Nice and colourful as well, which is really nice to see with like horror books and things like that. Do you know what I mean? And what a range of comic books that we've talked about, whether it be creators, books, all kinds of things. What a raft of recommends and comic books this show is. It's wonderful. Should we do it again next week, chaps?
Well, go on in.
I reckon so.
Yeah, go on then. Why not? And while we're figuring out what to talk about next week, spoilers, we've already got that sorted. You can do several different things for us. You can get some gear from acpgear.redbubble.com.
You don't mean drugs for those things.
Yeah.
No, as in like merch.
Get that somewhere else.
As in like threads, as in like cool swag. I don't know. If you want the ultimate Riz, I don't. I
always want it. I want the ultimate Riz.
Yeah, the ultimate Riz. But yeah, if you get ACP gear, we'll Riz you up. I don't know. I've completely lost it. But yeah, and thank you to everyone that's bought any of our gear. We really appreciate
definitely.
It helps the show out. And speaking of the show, if there's anything you want us to check out, recommend, or possibly if there's topics you want us to talk about, or if you're organising an event in a local comic book shop, and this goes worldwide, by the way, because we'll put the shout out in the show. Like, even though we're a little UK show, and we have people that listen from around the world, so if you've got a little shop and you're doing something and you're listening to this show, A, thank you very much for listening to this show. You're amazing. Keep up the good work. But B, let us know what you got coming up.
Do mention it. Someone might hear it and go along to the event.
Yeah. Because the only way we discover all these things is by talking about them and recommending them. So there you go. So you can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at awesomecomicspod on Insta, at the Awesome Pod on X. We're more active on Instagram, basically because it's pretty pictures and like.
Our Instagram's going well at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. And I have fun trying to choose what kind of music goes with the post that I'm putting out. It's always a little bit of a puzzle.
Got a Substack? Sign up to our Substack?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Where do people go to sign up for our Substack?
If you just look up Awesome Comics Podcast on Substack, it will take you there.
Pop up,
so we've got Mondays and Fridays postings on there. At the very least, there's quite possibly other stuff going up there. But we're really enjoying that format, and thanks to everyone who restacks us on there, or even sort of likes it and stuff. You can download the episode on there as well if you'd rather.
So you can download it on there, but there is also other articles and like there's the comic cover thing. We've got some ideas for stuff going forward.
It gives a chance to put sort of long form stuff on there, which is quite nice.
Yeah. We're all going to be sort of adding stuff to that all the time, so there's plenty more to come. And if you did download the episode from there, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And thank you if you listen to it on awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, say something nice about us, or like leave a nice review. Helps get the word out about the show and everything we talk about on a weekly basis. Likewise on Spotify, thank you for if you listen there. I think Apple and Spotify are the two best, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
But
okay,
you may have heard us on Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife. What other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on the Pod Network. Bad boys stick together, and incidentally, in case you didn't realise, they're never sad boys.
That's basically our motto, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a creed we've lived by since day dot on the ACP.
Yeah.
Don't be a sad boy.
Don't be a sad boy. Be a bad boy.
Be a bad boy.
Although be a bad boy responsibly and safe.
Yeah.
Other Wham lyrics will be available next week.
Yeah. Oh, please have a month of doing Wham lyrics as that, and see if people can figure out. But do like the real fucking random stuff that isn't there.
Have a little bit of. We're no more Club Tropicana.
No. Well, the drinks are free there apparently. Though.
It's free.
No.
Does that mean it's all inclusive?
I guess so.
It's like Benidorm.
Yeah. all in one price.
Yeah. Well, there is. Is it fun and laughter? And there's enough for everyone, isn't there?
Just enough, not too much.
Just enough for everyone, but not too much. There you go.
Let's not overanalyze the.
But speaking about just enough, but not too much. Where can people find us online, Tony?
Never on anything, or you can go to Tribute Press on Substack as well.
Nice. Damn.
You can. I'm still looking at X, but I'm not fucking posting anything. So I want X at Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com or on Global Comics, which I'm updating at the same time.
Nice.
It's even got the little animated frames, which is fun to do. It's not ready, but you can do that.
But wait, is it fun or is it not fun, Tan?
It's fun to interact with. It's not so fun to draw the things on screen. It's
right. Okay.
Drawing 4 rectangles is really taxing my ability.
But he's doing it all for you, lovely people.
Yeah, all for you.
We love you.
Then go for. Do you just say we love you?
No, because he loves you.
Oh, right, okay. That's not what I heard. But you can find
out there,
you can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you very much again for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. We've started the post 500 rollout.
Strong. And come to Drink and Draw.
Yeah, go to the Drink and Draw. Have a brilliant week wherever you are. We hope the comics you're making, hope that's going well. And if you want any, and if you don't feel it's going well, just keep doing it because you're fucking kicking ass and you're making a comic. So
throw some white out on it.
Yeah, and you're not alone. We've all had moments where it's like this isn't really working. Just keep plugging away at it.
Ask my missus.
I've had one of those moments
keep
in
plugging away
at it. That's what she says.
Oh dear. And what they also say
You're not pushing a stick in a dirty hole.
Fuck it out. What they also, I almost made it to the end of this show on a real hopeful note, but
it's delightful, isn't it?
Yeah. Join us next week for more great comics chat, and until then, wherever you are in the world, we hope you're happy, healthy, reading lots of comics you like, making comics that you love. From Dan, Tony, and myself in ACP Towers, have a brilliant week. And what else should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.